Good morning, everyone. Presentations are dead. That's what we heard 7 years ago. That's what many people had said before that, and that's what many people are still saying. Yet the presentations are here with us. And today we are going to basically explore the future of presentations, of event learning, and also of the audience interaction in general. And at this point, I'm going to risk one thing. I understand this is the third day of the conference. It's morning. It was the rendezvous last night. Who was at the rendezvous? Please raise your hand. Wow, great. So no excuses over here. And I'm going to ask you to close your eyes, please. I know it's morning. I know it's the third day. And now, please, imagine a session, imagine a presentation, imagine a webinar, imagine a seminar that delighted you, that impressed you, that made an impact on you. Cool. Do you have it in your minds? Great. Now, please open your eyes and turn to the person sitting next to you and tell them about this session that really delighted you. All right? I'm going to give you 1 minute. Please share with the person who is sitting next to you. All right? Thank you so much for joining us. Good morning. That's okay. If you can join ladies over here. The question was, think of a session that really delighted you, that was great, the learning session, the presentation.
He moved. And that ours have them. I don't think we'll get away from them, but yes, we're doing this.
Wonderful. I will now ask you to please slowly wrap it up. And now I would love to actually know what you were talking about. So let's bring it all up on the screens. So please grab your smartphones and go to slido.com and enter the code WEC19. You can do it through the web browser or you can go through the event app. Both options are absolutely viable and possible. So go to slido.com and enter the code WEC19. Please select the room, IAC meeting room of the future, when it's going to pop up. Great. So now, using one word, please describe a session that really impressed you. I heard some words like interactive, high energy. Those are great keywords. Interactive. We've got about over 15 people over here. 1 vote coming in. Let's get people to sign in. Can you access the app? All good? Okay. If you go to slido.com and just enter WEC. Great. We've got 5 votes in. High energy, collaborative, relaxing, engaging. Brilliant. 7 votes are in. In the meantime, while people are still typing their responses, anybody would like to share his or her session that really made an impact on them? Please raise your hand. Great. Can we have a mic, please? Cool. Thank you. Okay. What was the session about?
It was a session on how to use a tourniquet, and the instructor basically used the PowerPoint just a little bit. Is very concise and here are your steps, but then also had pictures and just explained the pictures, and then he had the session also included how to actually use it. So he showed you how to use the device itself.
So it was a great demonstration of what he was talking about.
Yep.
Thank you. Anybody else who would like to share? Great. Thanks, Anne.
Hi there. So I shared a session I saw here last year, actually, by Mel Robbins, the author of the 5-second rule. So she was really high energy. She maybe had a couple of slides, but it was literally pictures. It was just her personality, but she had really good advice as well.
Definitely, personality, great content, and visuals. That's what makes up a great session. Now we know that the reality is not always So great. Now think of one word. You don't have to close your eyes now. Think of one word that would describe the reality. What's the usual experience that you actually get at the conference or at the presentation that you attend? Now please use just one word to describe this experience. Trapped. Okay, if you are feeling trapped at any point at this session, feel free to leave. Like, I don't want to trap you for sure. Like, boring, dry, asleep, mundane. Okay, inspired, great. Some people actually do have positive experience at the usual, at the typical conference or an event. Cool. Do we have any more votes coming in? Great. When we ask this question, this is actually very often what we get, like uninspiring, boring, interactive. And very often, the result is the gentleman on the right side. And when we talk about the interaction, it's hard to call 5 minutes of a Q&A as an interaction. And I love this quote: interaction needs to be at the heart of how we organize events. It's not really something that you actually sprinkle on the top of the cake as a vanilla frosting. It really needs to keep the participant in the mind. And it has other implications as well. This was said by the chief event manager from The Economist magazine, and he actually iterated, like he said it very well: if you want to stay competitive, you need to make your events really interactive. People are really bored, and people are fed up with the traditional talking head. So hopefully I will not be a talking head over here. So what you will actually experience over here are three things. First of all, you will get the chance to experience these conversational interactive techniques. Some of them we already tried. Secondly, I'm going to share some of the interactive formats that we experienced at the conferences that we work with. And finally, I would like to create a space for you to learn from one another. Okay, over to you once again. I would like to give a full power to you. So you can choose. I prepared 4 case studies, and I would like you to choose actually 2 out of them. So I'm just going to do it in a really democratic way. So the first one is Web Summit. How many of you know Web Summit? It's a big event in Europe, 15,000 people coming in, entrepreneurs, innovators, and you'd like to learn about how they connected 15,000 people at once. The second is World Economic Forum, energizing political panels. The third one is South by Southwest, Slido, and all the other examples, how to break the traditional presentation. And the last one was participant-driven formats at the IMAX. So please, the choice is fully yours. Brad, if you would like to join us, it's slido.com, WEC19. Cool, we've got 12 votes in. Great. Are we happy with these 2? Please nod your head. Is everything okay? Does this sound okay to you? Okay, brilliant. So let's take a look at the first one, breaking the traditional presentations. And the second one was the participant-driven formats. Great. Breaking the traditional presentations. Whether we like it or not, presentations are still a backbone of any agenda, right? Gonna share 3 tips from you. I'm gonna share 3 tips with you. The first one, we don't have to go that far. Who knows this person? Please raise your hand. He was around here for the past 3 days. Great. This is Mark Cooper, and he's a fantastic speaker, and he's also a CEO of IAC. And during his presentation, when he's actually introducing the results from this research, he inserts interaction breaks during his 60-minute session. So we know that the attention span is short. Some people claim it's 2 seconds, some people say it's 18 minutes. No matter what we say, like, it's short. And if we want to deliver the content within 60 minutes, it will fall flat. So what he actually does is that he inserts these interaction breaks every 5 to 10 minutes to re-engage people. So he started, like, we actually co-presented this session together. He started by asking people who is actually in the room to get a feel about who is sitting over there, just to engage people right at the start. And this is an important thing. If you want to engage people and make the session interactive, do it right at the start. In the middle, it will be too late. Then he continued with gauging the general feeling about the topic that he was basically talking about. How ready do you feel you are to meet the future requirements for the design? In the middle of his session, He wanted to break that again. Like, you cannot repeat the same thing over and over again. So he put people together, and he got them to discuss what they think a venue focused on meetings will actually look like in 5 years. So give people something to actually work on. Like what we did in the beginning, right? Connect them, let them share some knowledge, and then bring it back to the screen, if you want to really amplify that learning. Finally, the last part was dedicated on some more polling and just gauging the general opinion. And he did the very same thing actually yesterday, and wanted to be recent. He asked the very same thing, like what will be the main challenge people will be facing? And look at this, people got engaged instantly. It's a simple thing. So if you're working with your speakers, make sure to encourage them to insert some interaction breaks. The important thing over here is don't do interaction for the sake of interaction. People will sniff it out. People will feel like, okay, this is not really actually so good. So make sure that they actually are able to work with the results and it makes sense within the content flow. The second tip over here, and maybe not every speaker will be able to do that, but this was a fantastic way how to actually turn the presentation into collaborative actually dialogue. So the speaker, the gentleman over here, he was talking about the GDPR. How many of you are familiar with the GDPR? Over here. Yes, back in Europe, everything was about the GDPR for the past 12 months. It's a dry topic. Not a lot of people are sick and tired of that. But yet he needed to deliver the content. He ditched his slides completely. He didn't use the slides basically completely. And he used the quiz questions at every single point that he tried to basically deliver. So he asked the audience, what does GDPR stand for? Crowdsource the opinion, and only then he actually delivers something. Not every person, not every speaker is able to do something like that. But you can advise them to use the quiz questions to engage with the audience throughout. Again, very important thing over here is to act on the results that you connect. Don't do interaction, don't do polling for the sake of polling. It will fall flat. People will be sick and tired of that. The third tip I have for you on breaking the traditional presentations is forget about keynotes completely. How many of you organize fireside chats at your events? Great. Anybody would like to share their opinion? Like, what's your success with the fireside chats? Okay. Thank you, Mike.
We had them at IAC this year. I'm part of the IAC.
Great.
And we actually called them micro-education sessions this year to get people to be a little bit more interested that they're going to learn something. It wasn't just a conversation, but it was great because it was very small, intimate, maybe 10 people, 12 people, and you really got to talk to each other about a topic. You know, it wasn't being talked at, it was a conversation.
Okay. So was there a speaker actually on stage?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
Well, yeah, she was sitting with us. So she at least started the conversation, and then from there we just all kind of jumped in and had different ideas and opinions and how to help each other.
That's great. Anybody else would like to share his or her experience with fireside chats? Okay, great. Let's move over there.
I've seen it done at a lot of events I've gone to, and we've started doing it a lot, and I think it works really well because it's not just one person droning on and on and on. There's actually a conversation happening, so it doesn't feel like it's so formulaic.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed it.
Thanks for sharing your insights. Anybody else? What is your opinion on the fireside chats? Some people love them, some people hate them. Some conferences actually forget about the keynotes completely. PCMA convening leaders, they had a keynote fireside chat instead of the keynote speaker. There are 3 advantages. I would like to encourage you actually to do that. First of all, you can bring the audience in. And this is absolutely a brilliant thing. Like, make sure that it's not a double presentation. 2 people actually talking on the audience. Bring the audience in. For instance, Gary Vaynerchuk, like he's a self-proclaimed marketing guru. Like he usually introduces the topic and then he lines up people and responds question after question. Over here, this is actually Elon Musk at South by Southwest last year, and over the 60-minute session, he received 1,000 questions from the audience. They were using Slido to crowdsource the questions, 1,000 questions over 60 minutes. People are very interested in asking their questions to these like a really big name speakers. And also talking about the big name speakers, it's a fantastic way how to get them to say yes. Like he came there on a family visit, and having this like a high-profile speaker, there's probably not a better speaker that every event organizer wants to have at his or her event. Like they actually convinced him to come on stage. If it was a presentation, it would never happen. Like the last month I was presenting, and it took me 30 hours to prepare for a 60-minute long presentation. If you engage somebody in a fireside chat, it's gonna take much, much, much less, substantially less, 1 hour, 2 hours.
Because, I mean, Elon Musk is still, you know, the speaker, even though you're asking him questions. So I guess I kind of got lost when you said get rid of the keynote, because you still have a draw. You haven't.
Okay.
So what are you
got
calling
it.
that?
Sorry, I used the keynote as a synonymous term for a presentation. So yes, keynote as a main session, definitely keep the keynote. Keynote as a presentation, you could actually try to replace it with a discussion with a high-profile speaker.
Juraj, could I add something?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Of course, not all speakers feel very comfortable with this. So one of the things that I think is part of what Juraj is saying is that you need to shift your relationship with people who provide content, and this is and sometimes you need different terminology. I don't use the word speakers when I design a program. I use the word content provider, and just that different word means that you start looking at the relationship you have with these people differently. They come to provide content. Maybe they don't need to speak. Maybe they're not really good at speaking. So what else can you let them do? At which they might be a lot better, answering questions or engaging with the audience or doing something which may be a stimulus for them as well, which may be more fun for them than indeed having to spend 30 hours on preparing a preparation and then having 60 minutes with 120 slides. That's not fun. It's not even fun for a person who comes to provide you with content. What is fun for them? Figure it out. And you have lots of other options. Sorry.
No, this is a great stuff, and especially like just following up on what Mike said. Like if you might have experts, and they're expert on a certain topic, but they might not be experts at public speaking. So you can get actually a moderator to help them narrate the story, to narrate the fun parts that they want to actually deliver. Great. Just to wrap it up, a few practical tips over here. Ask speakers to inject some interaction breaks into their flow. Potentially turn your presentation into a quiz, or at least encourage them to gamify it a little bit, and potentially forget about the presentation and try to have a fireside chat instead. Okay? And I was looking around, trying to find my smartphone to activate the next poll, which is over here. Very good. Now, I would like to ask you the following thing. Sorry about it. It should be on. Is this format applicable to your events? The tips that we shared over here, is this applicable to your events? Can you imagine using some of these tips that we've just discussed over here at your events? Okay. 62% say that yes, they cannot wait to try it. Let's hear some thoughts actually. Who would like to share? Yes, please, Anna.
So I have a question. Maybe you might be good at answering this. So our largest conference, we have 55 different countries, and we usually have about 12 to 15 translation booths. So there's so many people speaking different languages. Like, do you have any advice on that? Because the thing is that's nice about these keynote presentations, we get them in advance. The translators can have a look over it. You know, because sometimes when it's the informal chat, it's really difficult sometimes for the like, do you have any tips on that? Because I'm assuming you speak another language.
And just to make sure I understand, are you asking about the content that the speaker is providing, or about the interaction barriers that are imposed on the participants?
Yeah, so mainly like the more free-flowing Q&A sort of chat style.
That's a really good question actually over there, because as you mentioned, very often you organize international conferences and people might refrain, especially in Asia, from asking the questions because they don't think their English is good enough, for instance. So the technology can be of a great help over here. Like when people can actually type in their question and take their time to formulate it, and especially if they can type it in as anonymous, so there is this kind of a comfort that they actually have. If this addresses your question.
I could
Yeah, of course,
integrate?
please.
Because I have a past as an interpreter, so I know what these people want. But I also know that they, as a professional group, they tend towards hysteria, and you need to manage them very carefully. It's one of the reasons why I no longer do it. One of the things that they think is useful is to have the actual speech, but what they need, and they're not really aware of that sometimes, but what they need is the terminology. So they can always prepare for the terminology, and actually speaking, having to translate people who speak off the cuff is much easier than translating somebody who speaks from paper. So it's a matter of carefully managing that professional group, which is part of your solution, I think.
Thanks so much, Mike. Anybody else would like to share? Like some people, actually 44% says that sounds interesting, but you have to think about it. Anybody would like to share some of the concerns or doubts or comments on this? If not, we can totally move on. Okay, let's just move on. Cool. So basically please remind me, the second format that we decided was the participants driven, right? Do I remember well? Was it the second thing that we actually voted on? Brilliant. So let's skip over there. We're going to skip the panel discussions, which are great. But let's take a look at participant-driven format. On a scale of 1 to 10, like please raise your hand, how much control do you actually want to have over the event itself? I saw you were smiling over there. Like, please everybody stand up. Does everybody stand up? Or actually, how much control you are able to sort of give up on, all right? So let's formulate it in this way. 10 is you want to have full control, all right? And please sit down I will be going down. Please sit down if I'm going to hit 6, 7, 8, etc., what do you think? Okay, 10 is the full control. You want to have full control. You don't want to give up anything. 9, like you want to give up a little bit of the control. You want to give up a little bit of control. You want to give up more of the control. 8. Okay, 8. Okay, so 7. Okay, 6. 5. All right, so you're able to give up about half of the control over the agenda. But majority sit down, if I remember well, at 8, right? So you want to give up some of the control, right, over the agenda. The funny thing with these participants-driven formats are that you leave a lot of space for people. You give up a lot of control, actually, over here. And we might not always like that. But these participants-driven formats were really great, like if we actually give up some of the control. And I'm going to share 2 examples over here. One is from the IMEX, exclusively corporate. These 2 gentlemen, what they did, they wanted to create the roundtable discussions towards the end of the day. They left that part of the program completely blank. And at the start of the day, they wanted to find out what are the concerns that the audience is actually having, right, about organizing the corporate events. You can't know that in advance. So as part of the opening session, they asked people to discuss the main challenges that they have actually about organizing the corporate events. They ended up with a list of 28 topics that people found really burning. What followed afterwards is they told the audience, okay, now take a moment and upvote the ones that you think that are the most pressing ones. They ended up with a list of 6 topics. And they kept it. Towards the end of the day, where they had this empty blank spot, they used these topics to assign them at the round tables and got people to actually discuss them. It was super relevant, it was super engaging, it was super interactive. But they had to give up some of the control just basically to create this kind of agenda. So participants-driven format, I highly encourage you. Like they're the scariest thing. And when we organize our events, I'm always like, okay, will this work? They work every single time, and people always say that it's actually the highlight of their events. this is from our user actually meetup. Some of you that we organize this on a regular basis, and when we meet with our clients, once again, for us it's also a great research to find out what people are actually struggling with. So we ask them once again to crowdsource all the stuff and then assign the topics at the round tables. So a few practical tips if you would like to go ahead with something like that. Crowdsource the topics at the start, as part of the intro, as part of the session. Let the audience pick the most burning ones. If you want to skip the guesswork, you could totally do this. 3, arrange the tables, and from the experience, don't try to put more than 8 people at the table. Otherwise, it's already almost like 2 groups. So 6, 7, 8 people maximum, and assign 1 topic per each table. Okay, you'll be talking about this, you'll be talking about that, you'll be talking about that. Then let people choose their tables and actually get them to discuss it for 15, 20 minutes. This works. 15 minutes is a good time for the discussion actually to evolve a little bit. So dedicate at least some time to it. And if you dedicate a slot of 60 minutes, make sure you have a space to repeat it 3 times. Afterwards, if you want to do some debrief, you can still do that. Now the question, and we've got the 5 minutes over there. The question for you is the following. Is this format applicable to your events? Can you imagine giving up on some control and creating the roundtable discussions where people could actually create the agenda and participate in the program that they co-created? Obviously, there are other ways how to do that. You can even create the agenda yourself. This was just one of the examples. Great. Let's hear some thoughts on this. 70% of people said that they can't wait to try it. Who would like to share his or her thoughts? Anybody? Okay. Brilliant. Talisa.
We do a diversity and inclusion conference, and we always get the feedback that they want it to be more interactive. So I'm definitely going to try this at our next one.
Brilliant. Let me know if you'd like to learn some more tips. Happy to share. Anybody else? Sorry?
We do use Slido, which is
Thanks, Talisa. Anybody else would like to share his or her thoughts? Over here, maybe? Yeah.
I think as a participant that I go to a lot of conferences, it's just nice to be able to know that what I want to talk about is something that's going to be addressed, because nobody likes to be talked at, and, you want to be able to be interactive and really learn from your peers, because that's where you really get good ideas, not from somebody who's going to stand up there that isn't really in the mix of everything, so.
That's a great point. And there's actually a variation to this, which is called the expert room, where you actually put 6 people at the table, and each participant at the table can think of one challenge that he or she is facing, and the rest of the table is trying to provide some insights and some advice, some pieces of advice. And then once they basically wrap that up, within 5 to 6 minutes, which was dedicated to that particular person, you can move to the next one, and that person presents his or her challenge to the rest of the table. It's amazing, really. It's so wonderful to try these things. Great. We have 2 minutes, and I have a question for you. Would you like to now sort of replicate this thing and talk about the interactive session that you experienced or that you organized in the next 2 or 3 minutes, and then share with the rest of the group? Or you want me to wrap this up? It's totally up to you. You want to wrap it up? It's up to me. No, this is a democracy. I try to make it as democratic as possible. Okay, let's raise a hand. Who wants to speak with the peers around here, and talk about, share inspiration and talk about the session that you are really proud of? How many of you wants to do that? Okay, you want to wrap it up? Okay, brilliant. So I'm going to share a few tips over here before we wrap it up. Just to do a quick dissection over here, how I was thinking about designing this session. That might be an extra inspiration for you. First of all, I created the content. I sort of knew what I would like to deliver. But I wanted to make it interactive right from the start. So we had these like a peer-to-peer discussions where I connected you together and you had the chance to talk. Then, especially if you have a larger group, like this is a rather smaller group, like 15, 20 people, but if you have 200 people, it's very interesting to sort of know the feeling, what people were talking about. So bring it on the screens with a word cloud or with any other types of polls. Then, this was like a small experiment on my side. I gave you all the full power to choose what is the most relevant thing for you. I was trying to hit the mark and not talk about the stuff that you might find irrelevant. Then, after each basically use case, I would still love to know how applicable is this. Was I hitting the mark? Wasn't I hitting the mark? Once again, getting the feedback from you. And finally, we didn't have a chance to do that, but I wanted to create some kind of a group work to basically wrap this up. Okay? Would this make sense? Great. Any thoughts, any questions, any comments? Great. Before you leave, can I please ask you one more thing? In a light of this whole session, I would love to ask you, how did you like this session? Was it useful for you? Did you like it? What are some tips that I could improve for the next time? And if you're interested in learning more tips about the meeting design, about Slido or anything, please leave your contact details and I'll be more than happy to get in touch, right? You don't have to fill in all 3 parts. If you want, you can just leave your rating. If you want, you can leave all those free. But this is really priceless in order to improve these sessions so the next participants can get even more out of it. We've got 4. I'm just going to give you a few more seconds. Thank you so much for coming. You are the brave ones on the 3rd day, 8:30 in the morning. So enjoy the rest of the conference and safe travels back home. Thank you so much.